Hey, it's Ryan with this week's Mille Lacs Fishing Report. It's mid-November and water temps are about 39 degrees. We've seen some big changes this week. It's gotten cold. We have some snow on the ground now. I've got some snow in my boat. Some of the accesses are starting to freeze over and become inaccessible. Some of the bays are starting to crust over a little bit too. I wouldn't get too wound up if you're an ice fisherman yet. We still have a ways to go before we get to that point. But things are definitely heading in the right direction for ice, and looking at the upcoming forecast, it's supposed to get pretty cold here in the near future. I think our days are numbered as far as open water goes, and with that, I think we'll start with the bass and walleye this week. I don't believe there's going to be many people out fishing for those, but for the hardy souls that decide to go out there, what I would do if I were bass fishing right now is I would probably be fishing either blade baits or tubes. If you can find a concentration of fish, which is really typical this time of year, especially in a little bit deeper water, say that 18 to 25 foot range, if you can find a concentration of fish, dragging a tube real slow or hopping a blade bait up off the bottom can put fish in the boat. That's the best way probably to end the season for smallmouth. You can get cold, lethargic fish to eat on those two baits. And if you're looking to get out and get a snow bass, well, now's your opportunity to try it. As far as walleye fishing goes, there's a couple different ways that a guy can go for them. There's more than one way that you can target them, but typically this time of year when I'm doing walleyes, what I'm going to be doing is trolling. Fishing with a rod in hand gets pretty hard on the hands when you're rigging and stuff like that. So typically when it gets to this very end part of the season, I'm going to be trolling, putting rods in the rod holders or wearing big gloves while I'm trolling. And I'm just going to troll slow, about 1.5 miles an hour. I'll work depths anywhere from 6 to 12 feet of water, or else I'll work something in that 17, 18 foot range. Rock to gravel transitions can be good. Sand to rock transitions can also be good for walleyes this time of year. If you have green weeds, green cabbage, you can try trolling through that. I know there's still fish in there, but those sand and gravel to rock transitions are typically best, and there's plenty of them throughout the lake. What I'd be trolling as far as baits go is stick baits. If I'm going up shallow, I'm going to be running a shallow diver, something such as a husky jerk or a rogue. If I'm out a little bit deeper, what I'll probably run is something like a deeper husky jerk. Blue and silver, fire tiger, those are both great colors. Moving on to the muskie bite. Muskie Bite's still going to revolve around tullibee. As I've talked about before, the tullibee spawn at about 40 to 42 degree water temps. We're right at 40 right now as I sit. I've been seeing the temps bob around from 39 to 40 degrees. So the tullibee has been spawning for a couple days now. What I've noticed is Monday there seemed to be a peak in activity. We had a big fish on in my boat, had it up to the net. Had a little misfortune at the end, and the fish came unbuttoned and worked its way back out of the net. That happens. A couple of good friends of mine, they boated a nice fish on Monday, and I also heard of a couple other fish being caught on Monday. So as far as the tullibee spawn goes, I would say the peak was probably on Monday. That was just before they really started to go. Now, the muskie bite will continue to bite here throughout the rest of the month. It's just not going to be as good as that initial peak that we had on Monday, I don't believe. Now, the tullibee are spawning in full swing. They're going to continue for a few days here. It's kind of up in the air how long they'll go, but what I'm seeing in the forecast is temperatures starting tonight are really going to fall off. So it's going to be harder to get out on the lake. You know, the accesses are starting to freeze up. Some of the bays are starting to freeze up a little bit. So accessibility to the lake is going to become a lot more difficult, but there's still going to be people grinding it out for probably at least another week here. If you're going to go for the muskies, there's two ways really to do it right now, and it's either trolling or casting. Now, as far as trolling goes, you're going to want to run big baits, stuff that's either kind of what I like to run is something either bright or natural colors, something that looks like a tullibee, or something that's just really, really bright. I'm still trolling them pretty quick, maybe 4 miles an hour. I might go down to 3 miles an hour this time of year, but I'm still trolling them pretty quick overall. Most of the areas that I'm going to focus on when trolling muskies is going to be somewhere in that 6 to 12 foot range, or else I'm going to be out off the breaks a little bit deeper, somewhere around that 17 to 20 foot range. Now, most of the tullibee, what they're going to be doing is spawning on reefs adjacent to deep water. So wherever you find those reefs, troll around those, mark some fish on your graph. There's definitely going to be muskies with them. Now, to talk about casting, generally there's kind of one way I do it this time of year. I usually do most of my casting related around the tops of the reefs. I will drop out to the edges at times. I will fish that 15 to 20 feet of water occasionally, casting big swim baits, sometimes crankbaits, but most of my attention is going to be focused in that 6 to 12 foot of water. The baits that I'm using are going to be big swim baits, big curly tail swim baits, big paddle tail swim baits. I will occasionally throw crankbaits too, but most of it's going to be swim baits. As far as colors go, it's going to be something similar. Generally, the colors I pick are going to be something natural, something kind of a tullibee color, or something very, very bright. So one of those two colors, that'll get the job done for you out here. Cast them out, let them sink a little bit, get halfway down in the water column. And I typically don't put a lot of action into them. A lot of times I'll do a steady retrieve. Sometimes what I'll do is I might lift up once or twice midway through the retrieve. But my retrieves aren't too loud. I keep it pretty subtle, and it generally puts fish in the boat. Hopefully these tips help you out, and have a great weekend.